How livable is Burlington, Ontario, and where are the top 10 neighborhoods to raise a family in Burlington? Well, in today's video, we're gonna be jumping on the computer and breaking down the Area Vibes website, and I'll be giving you my perspective. As I can tell you right now, there's a lot I agree with on this list, but there's also a lot I disagree with. And in total, if you don't know, the Area Vibes website breaks down how livable Burlington is, as well as each one of the neighborhoods based on an index that takes into account 9 different categories, from the amenities to the commute, to the cost of living, the crime, the employment, the health, the housing, the schools, and the overall neighborhood rating, and puts it in an index in 100. So if you want to learn my perspective as someone that's lived in Burlington for 20 years and now helps countless families relocate here and buy a home, keep on watching. But if you just want to learn more about what it's like living in Burlington, Oakville, Hamilton, and the surrounding cities, make sure to hit the subscribe button. My name is Matthew, the founding realtor of the Living in Hamilton channel and team. And for the past couple of years, we've been helping people just like yourselves relocate here to each one of the cities. Now, I won't waste any more time. Let's just jump onto the map and see how livable Burlington is and each one of the categories it breaks down, and I'll give you my thoughts as we go through it. All right, so as you can see right off the bat, Burlington's livability score out of 100 is an 81, which overall is pretty solid. But as you can see, there are definitely some Fs as well as a lot of A pluses that go associated with living in Burlington. So let's jump down and just get right into it. So the first category we're going to be looking at is the amenities. Now, what I have to see is they gave Burlington an F. And while I would agree, compared to like Hamilton or Toronto, the amenities in Burlington are going to be lacking, but I don't think it deserves an F because I've helped a lot of clients relocate to smaller towns, smaller communities outside of the GTA, and those amenities I would give an F. Burlington has some great parks, like some of the ones that really come to mind that you will enjoy that they don't even include in this list of parks here would be first and foremost Spencer Smith Park, where all the festivals happen. You got Burlington Beach, which is another great park. You also have Bronte Creek in between Burlington and Oakville, which is a massive conservation area, to the Royal Botanical Gardens on the other side. So while I agree it doesn't have as much opportunity, especially when you compare it to Hamilton, the waterfall capital of the world, I would have to say the parks overall in Burlington are great. And for that matter, like most neighborhoods are going to have a neighborhood park, like the Brant Hills Park, the Ireland Park, the Kinsman Park. These are all like small neighborhood parks that they're mentioning anyways. So I would say as well, no matter what neighborhood you're living in, you're always going to be within walking distance of a park. Now, the next category, apparently the only entertainment that goes on in Burlington is the Cineplex. We have one Cineplex right on Branch Street. The other one's right on Burlington. It's technically in Oakville, but I know a lot of residents in Burlington also visit that one there. So right there, you got 2. Other than that, we have the Burlington Live Performing Arts Center right in downtown Burlington that has live shows that isn't even listed here. And then not to mention, while there is a bit of nightlife or bars more specifically in downtown Burlington, for the most part, the entertainment is going to be lacking. And that's why you see a lot of people, jump on the GO train station and really head down to Toronto for that there. And now in terms of the food and drinks, apparently Subway is the most popular restaurant within Burlington. I would completely disagree with that. Now, it doesn't have nearly the amount of like mom and pop local restaurants that I personally really love about Hamilton. But after living in Burlington for 20 years, there's some great local spots you'll need to check out. So some of the ones that quickly come to mind, first and foremost, Son of a Peach Pizzeria in downtown Burlington. You got Tamp Coffee for an amazing latte, JC's Hot Bagels for the best bagel sandwich. They're the biggest bagel sandwiches you can get around, and a bunch of other ones like La Creamerie de Creamerie. Basically, they have this Blizzard that I think is better than a Blizzard. Nonetheless, well, it doesn't have that many options. I have to say, like, what they're listing here is completely incorrect. Now, in terms of the grade I'd give it maybe like a C+, B- in terms of how you combine the parks, entertainment, and drinks. Now let's move on to the commute time. Now, the commute was rated an A+. Now, this is really varying. So in total, apparently 43% of people drive to work. I imagine that number actually is much higher. It probably has gone down since COVID and a lot of work from home now. With that said, I'm pretty sure it's probably above 50%. 5% take public transit. This number, so in Hamilton, I thought this number was low. This number I actually think is pretty accurate. For reference, Hamilton's also 5%. It makes no sense to me why they both would be 5%. Hamilton's a much bigger city, way more public transit options to choose from. In terms of the public transit in Burlington, yeah, we have a bus route that, pretty much covers all of Burlington, but it's like every 30 minutes, and they're kind of spaced in between and not really the most efficient. I imagine if you are taking public transit to work, you're probably taking the GO train line into either Mississauga or Toronto is probably the most common, or one of the GO bus options, taking you out over to other areas of Toronto and Mississauga as well. And apparently 2% walk to work, which is only 1% lower than the Canadian average. I would say this really does depend where you live. 90% of Burlington, I imagine you won't be able to walk to work unless you're like living right beside your work. The one area though I would say is if you work in the downtown area of Burlington, you could probably walk to work, but I think 2% is pretty realistic right here as well. Now, let's go to the cost of living. Now, apparently the cost of living in Burlington is 5% above the national average. However, Ontario as a whole is 11% more, 11% higher than the Ontario average, and overall in Canada, it's 100. So I don't know how those numbers all rank. What I can say though, gas prices, food prices, just overall household expenses are going to be very similar to, if you're thinking about moving to Burlington, are going to be very similar to Hamilton, Oakville, like even out to Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo. They're all going to be the same. I would say it's more affordable than Toronto, no doubt. Like just buying a simple groceries like a loaf of bread is going to cost more in Toronto. The gas is going to be a bit more in Toronto. With that said, the biggest cost of living, which is going to really drive up, I imagine, this score here of an F, is the cost to purchase real estate, or the average rent. So we'll go over what livability down below that they have on the real estate options, but that's what I would say. So overall, I'd probably give it like a D+ because of the real estate costs being very expensive. If you take the real estate costs out, maybe B- maybe if you have a few other expenses that are a little bit more expensive. However, with that said, overall, that's what I would rate it. Now, this area here, crime is apparently a B+ in Burlington. It's 10% lower than Ontario, with only 2,776 total crime happening out of 100,000 people. For reference, Burlington's population is about 200,000. I think it's a bit over now, but nonetheless, about 200,000. So about 5,000 for quick math in total crime that happens. 1 in 3, 37 chance to become a victim, and year-over-year crime has not increased in Burlington. Now, what I would say is, me personally, I would give crime in Burlington, or more specifically Halton as a whole, an A+. And the reason why that is when you compare it to a small town that has a very small population, Burlington is obviously going to have more crime just because it is a bigger city, and therefore that just attracts more crime in general, and it's in the GTA, right? But with that said, Halton, which Burlington is a part of that region, has been rated for over 20 years as one of the safest places to live in Canada, not for 1 year, not for 2 years, but 20 years. And this is fantastic because if you are looking to raise a family, this is one of the categories I think you want to be specializing in. Now, because it is so fantastic to raise a family, that is why the real estate prices are so high. So for me personally, I would have to give it an A+, but of course, if you want to learn more about the crime rates, I'd recommend going to the Halton crime map and the Halton crime or police website. That will give you the best context. All right, let's now drop down to the employment. And as we can see here, the median income is much higher than the Canadian and Ontario average. Currently, the household income in Burlington is sitting at $110,000. Now, I would say this is going to widely vary depending on the different neighborhoods you're looking in Burlington. I know some, just looking at the data by Statistics Canada, some are above like 150, 200, where other ones are kind of hovering more in like the 90s, 80s. So it really does depend on the neighborhoods you're looking for, which is also going to be reflective in the real estate prices for each one of those neighborhoods. With that said, if we look at the labor force, we can see 63% of anyone that could be possibly in the labor force is in the labor force, which is 1% lower than the Canadian average. So I imagine, very on par with all of Canada. And then the unemployment rate is only 3%, 47% lower than the Canadian average. I imagine that number is a little bit higher than that there, but nonetheless, the employment opportunities and just employment of the population is going to be high. Now, what I would say is a lot of the people who live and reside in Burlington necessarily don't work in Burlington. It doesn't have that big of an employment sector compared to Toronto or Hamilton. Oftentimes, you're going to be commuting, which is why so many people take the GO train, or so many people drive on the 403 QEW out to their jobs and the other parts of the GTA. Now let's move on to the health and safety. So maybe this is where they included the crime statistics, but I don't know why it would, because crime and safety are kind of similar. With that said, let's break down each of these categories here. So first of all, we have the main hospital in Burlington, Joseph Brant Hospital. This is on the south part, kind of actually right beside Spencer Smith Park in Burlington Beach. It's a solid hospital nonetheless. What I would mention here If you're living in the north part, so you mean Alton Village, the Orchard, Millcroft, even Head Forest for that matter, those there, it's actually going to be a shorter drive to go to the Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital. And that's also just another great hospital. So I would just add that as a side note. In terms of pharmacies, as you can see, we have a lot of different Shoppers Drug Marts, Pharma Saves, a couple Rexalls as well throughout. So, and then a bunch of family practices as well. And then in terms of doctors, there's going to be a lot of different specialized clinics, just both in walk-in, but also you mean if you need to get X-rays done or whatever, need to visit a physiotherapist. There's going to be a lot of employment options if that's you and you want to work there. Or if you need to get some work done, you can easily find it most likely in Burlington. And again, if you need to travel out, Hamilton has some of the best healthcare in the world, especially Canada. So you can go there, and then also Toronto just has some great healthcare. So I would have to agree with the A+ rating here as well. Now, if we look at the housing, A+ it gives it, right? The median home value is just under a 1.1. I think the median and detached home price right now in Burlington is probably sitting around like 1.2, 1.3. You know what I mean? Townhomes, you're looking around $1 million, just under $1 million, typically speaking. And then condos, you know what I mean? Anywhere, I mean, on the low side in the 400s, but typically 500 to 600 is what you're looking at. The median rent right now is $2,500 for a 2-bed place is probably what you're looking to find there. And home ownership is 76%. So overall, like I personally love the housing opportunities Burlington gives you. There's just a wide variety of different options to choose from, and it can fit any budget. With that said, the budget does need to be a bit higher, as you can find a lot more affordable areas just outside the GTA or also in Hamilton as well that are going to be way more affordable than Burlington. However, if you can afford Burlington, Burlington's a great spot to purchase a home. Then let's move down to the Burlington schools, and this was rated A-. So overall, the high school graduation rate is at 89%, which is 7% higher than the Canadian average. The bachelor's degree is at about 32%, and the school test scores are 11% higher than the Canadian average, sitting at 73%. So what I can tell you is looking at the Fraser Institute, which is probably the best place to go and look for those Ontario standardized tests of grade 3, 6, and 9. They put an index. You can see that the vast majority of Burlington schools are ranking above the provincial average. So that completely tracks both in terms of the high school graduation rate and the test scores. In terms of the bachelor degree, I would even throw like college diplomas into that. I imagine if you throw college into that as well, this number is quite high because the real estate costs are quite high. The rent is quite high as well. You are just going to get a lot more professionals or people that have a post-secondary education, because that is required to purchase the real estate, because of you need to have just a higher income in order to do that, in order to get the loans, etc. So my guess is that's actually probably undershooting it. I imagine that's probably close to that 50%, but that's just my opinion. And then we have the user rating was an A+. I don't know how valid this is. It's only of 9 reviews, but nonetheless, it's nice to see that A+ for the user rating for the 9 people who entered it. I don't know where they got those 9 people. So now that we know that, let's look at the different neighborhoods in Burlington and see where the best neighborhoods are for a family. So here's actually the chart that pulls it up, and we can review each of them. So in first place, they had written was Alton Village. Alton Village amenities, education, housing, and crime were all pretty much an A or A+. So Alton Village, if you don't know, is kind of out here on the north end. It's the most recently newly built neighborhood. It's got the highest density, so lots of townhome options, lots of detached home options, lots of semi-detached home options. And then just kind of along Appleby, you're going to find some newer condo buildings. One's been built, one is currently being built as well. Definitely a great neighborhood. It has 2 great schools as well to choose from. So absolutely would have to say Alton Village could be a great option. Similar to Alton Village is the Orchard. This is kind of just a little bit south of Alton Village, a little bit more east, and actually backs onto Bronte Creek, that amazing park we were talking about. It's really the neighborhood that is next over beside Oakville. So the amenities are a C+. To be honest, any amenities that you're accessing in Alton Village, you're also accessing in the Orchard. So if this Alton Village is getting an A+, I'd have to say the amenities in Orchard should also be getting at least an A, not a C+. Education, A+ across the board. Housing, A+ as well, because the Orchard also has that diverse amount of housing options to choose from in terms of both detached homes, townhomes, and then kind of on the edges, you're going to find some low-rise condo options to choose from. And one of the things you're going to notice about Alton Village in the Orchard, the median age is actually going to be lower and younger than some other areas in Burlington. So median age in Alton is at 34%. In the Orchard, it's at 36. I think the median age for Burlington as a whole is like 42, 43 years old. If we go down here, The next two areas we're looking at is Head and Forest. So for perspective, Head and Forest is just located over here. So kind of south, because you have the west side of Alton Village just being developed. So it's just south of that here. I like Head and Forest. It's got a bit bigger lots in terms of when the real estate was done. It's not as new, but you can find a lot of homes that have been updated recently that lead to some great opportunities. In terms of the amenities, sure, I would say it's not as good as Alton because you're going to find a lot of shopping here and here. With that said, I also think it's still similar-ish to Alton, and that's why I'd put it more closer to that A. Education, of course, is an A+. Housing, again, is an A+. Less options to choose from in terms of townhomes. You're going to find a few, but mostly here you're going to find detached homes with slightly larger lots. Crime rate is a B+. Which is so funny that it's a B+ because the main police station within Burlington is in Head and Forest right here, kind of along. It's actually kind of like right beside that exit right here. So I imagine that might be higher. I'm surprised to see that's a B+ when that's one of the major police stations is right there. But nonetheless, you can always reference the Halton Police map and their website for the most up-to-date results there. Then we have the Palmer neighborhood. That's actually just sitting south of Head and Forest. It's a smaller neighborhood, about half the size of the last couple we've talked about. Amenities are an A+, education A+, housing A+, crime B. So one of the things, because you are kind of closer to like the QEW here, you're gonna notice a light industrial area, commercial area right here as well, which kind of eats the other half. So it's funny that like Head and Forest is a B- in the amenities, and this is an A+. I would actually probably flip this because Palmer, you're gonna find some right here. You have to really travel up to it, or you have to go over the QEW and down to the South Burlington. So I slightly disagree with that one here. I'd probably have Palmer a little bit lower. But nonetheless, still a great neighborhood. The next one we're going to look at is the most affordable area, or second most affordable, depending on how you define them, is Brant Hills to purchase a detached home, townhome. Again, of all the areas we've discussed so far, this area here is going to be the oldest area. It's going to be those smaller detached homes, semi-detached as well. Amenities, an A-, education A+, housing A+, crime B. So Brant Hills, for your reference, is more on the western side right here. So you're a bit more tucked away from the amenities. You don't really have anything along this road here other than a small plaza kind of sitting right here. For the most part, you're going to be driving more to the Head and Forest ones, which, funny enough, has got a B- score versus Brant Hills A-. But nonetheless, still a great community to choose from, especially if you're looking for the most affordable area to purchase a detached home. Then, an area that is not affordable, or at least is one of the more expensive areas to purchase a detached home, is Millcroft. A- amenities, A+ education, A+ housing, A+ crime. So, you know what I mean? Like, I view these amenities very similar to the Orchard, Alton Village, etc., because the Millcroft is sitting right here. So it's literally getting you anything that Alton has access. Millcroft is typically bordering it as well. Plus, it has the plazas on the south end as well. It's one of the areas my clients absolutely love. Not only is it unique with a golf course just running throughout it, but here, because a lot of the homes here were really built in the 90s, a little bit into the 80s, and then a little bit into early 2000s as well. You're going to have good sized lots, but huge homes here compared to some of the other areas like we just talked about, like Brant Hills, Palmer, Head and Forest. Millcroft is going to be the most expensive area, but that also kind of translates to the real estate cost being also the third highest in Millcroft compared to all the other neighborhoods within Burlington. However, with that said, it's got great schools, great amenities, great safety because, you know what I mean, you have the police station, like I was just saying, right here as well. Then in seventh place, we have Roseland. Roseland is on the south end. Only got 4,500 people. However, here is going to be the second place, really the most expensive. You could say Shore Acres is number one. These kind of are right beside each other, and that's why they're kind of used synonymously. But if we go down here and see them, you have Roseland right here, Shore Acres right here. Now, what do they give the amenities? So they give the amenities for Roseland and Shore Acres a C+, C. I would agree with that. The reason why that is because primarily, like, along Lakeshore, it's just big detached homes that are kind of bordering the lake. Along kind of New Street right here, you're going to find some small plazas, but not many options to choose from. So I actually agree, like, in terms of the amenities, these areas are probably lacking in that terms. With that said, not a long drive until you find those plazas as well. And these areas here, what you're going to be finding is two different types of real estate options. You're going to find some side splits, some back splits that there are the original homes, some bungalows as well. But then you're also going to find a bunch of custom infill projects that have been built anywhere really in the last 30 years, but really in the last 20 years is most common, that just offer bigger homes, and each one really has their own unique characteristics and just quirks. So if you want your home to be unique, you love the mature trees, you love a larger lot, these areas here are going to be fantastic. With that said, that's also reflected in the price. Then in 8th place, we have Sheldon Creek. Now, I refer to this as Pinedale, but nonetheless, Sheldon Creek is right here. So fantastic option. Very similar, I would say, to Head Forest, Palmer neighborhood, just a bit more on the eastern side. You have the easternmost GO train station here as well. At Appleby Goal, you have this huge soccer field. You got a bunch of indoor domes as well to choose from. That plaza I was mentioning you of Burloak is right here. That's got that Cineplex and a few other shopping options to choose from. However, compared to like Alton Village, the Orchard, Millcroft, it's got less shopping options to choose from. Nonetheless, still got a good amount. Now, if we go here and see what it was rated with C+, amenities, I'd probably put that at a B. Education, A, okay. Housing, A+, and crime, B. And then we already discussed Short Acres, very similar to Roseland. This is the most expensive area to purchase a detached home on average in Burlington, other than, if we go out into like the rural part of Burlington with those estates where you have large lots, this is the most expensive neighborhood within the city of Burlington. And then rounding out, the 10th best neighborhood is Longmore. So Longmore is located right here, and I spent a lot of time in Longmore because I used to go to Nelson High School back in my high school days. It's a great neighborhood. You're going to find less infill projects, more of those side splits, back splits that are really common throughout the southern end of Burlington in total. Great education because, Nelson has been one of the routinely rated high schools. It slipped a little bit in the Fraser Institute rankings, but I'm sure it'll bounce back. Great sports education, great education, and great music programs to choose from. In terms of the amenities, you're basically accessing the same amenities that Roseland and Short Acre offer you, with really plazas along either Appleby or Walkers and New Street typically. With that said though, these southern ends here, you are going to be a bit closer to downtown Burlington that has some great local shops and restaurants to enjoy. So I hope now you have better learned if Burlington is livable for you. As you can see, there was a lot that I agreed with on this website, but also some stuff I disagreed with. So if you want to get our personal recommendation based on what you're looking for, send me and my team a message today. But if you want to learn more about the different pros and cons from my perspective after living in Burlington for over 20 years, that's the next video I recommend you go check out. So you can find that video right here. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.